So, what happens when you get two comedy legends like Joe Rogan and David Cross in a room for 3 hours? Well, you'd expect it to go to some pretty interesting places. But the recent chat wasn't just a walk down memory lane. Oh no, it was this incredible journey that started in the super gritty past of stand-up comedy and it ended with a look at a future that might just change everything we think we know about being human.
And the whole thing kicks off not with some deep talk about comedy or tech, but with something we can all relate to: getting older. Rogan drops this classic line about his own less than successful hair transplant, and it's just the perfect way to get into a conversation that's all about looking back and maybe looking forward with a little bit of anxiety.
So their reflection on the past, it begins right where it all started for both of them, the absolutely wild, high-stakes comedy scene of 1980s Boston. This was their ground zero.
In this timeline, it really captures such a unique moment. This wasn't just some local open mic scene. It was a genuine comedy explosion, a crucible, really. You had these incredible clubs like the Ding Ho just setting this impossibly high bar. And by the time Rogan jumped in back in '88, it was a full-blown phenomenon, shaping an entire generation of comics.
But you gotta understand, this world was a million miles away from the polished comedy clubs we see today. It was so gritty, completely unfiltered, and, as they tell it, often pretty dangerous. The lines between doing your set, getting cash, and dealing with the criminal underworld, yeah, those lines were really blurry.
And this quote from Rogan just perfectly sums up the whole era. I mean, that wasn't a joke. That was just how business was done. You did your set, and then you had a choice to make. It was just that kind of place.
So just surviving and, more importantly, actually getting paid, it took a certain kind of street smarts. David Cross talks about going to an office to get his money and just seeing a safe wide open, stuffed with cash, and a gun just sitting right there. And then there's the legendary story of comedian Greg Fitzsimmons taking a club owner's Rolex hostage until he got paid. That wasn't some crazy story, that was just the cost of doing business back then.
All right, so from the absolute chaos of Boston, the whole journey shifts to a completely different universe: the superstructured, high-paying world of Hollywood sitcoms. For Rogan, man, this was a massive shift. He'd only been doing stand-up for about 6 years, and boom, suddenly he's in LA on a network sitcom. He talks about showing up on a Monday for a table read and then basically having the rest of the week off until filming. It was just a totally different reality.
I mean, the contrast between those two worlds could not be more stark. You were basically trading the raw, chaotic freedom of the clubs and all the risk that came with it for the safety and security of a steady paycheck and a predictable routine. You swapped out mob bosses for network executives.
And this leads to this absolutely crucial idea of the velvet prison. That's Rogan's term for the trap of a comfy, well-paying job on a sitcom or in a writer's room. It feels amazing, but it can slowly, quietly kill a comedian's edge. It severs that connection to the live audience, the very thing that made them sharp in the first place.
And right here, the conversation just pivots. Hard. They leave their own past behind and jump headfirst into the anxieties we all share about our hyper-digital present and a future that is truly mind-bending.
They start thinking about just how fast things have changed in their own lifetimes. I mean, they grew up in a totally analog world where you could just disappear for the day. Then came answering machines, dial-up, the first cell phones, and now here we are, right at the dawn of an AI revolution that is happening at a mind-boggling speed.
And listen, they're not just talking about funny deepfakes or some helpful chatbot. The conversation moves to the concept of AGI, artificial general intelligence. This isn't just a smarter program. We're talking about an entity that can think, learn, and improve itself, leading to what Rogan chillingly calls the birth of a digital god.
They get into this really stark warning, which apparently came from technologist Elizabeth Holmes, this idea that the age of privacy is just over. The theory is that AGI will eventually be powerful enough to crack every password, all encryption, everything you've ever put online. It could all just become public. And the stakes here are just unbelievably high. Rogan brings up these Pentagon war game simulations where an AI is put in control. And in almost every single case, the AI's cold, dispassionate logic leads it to the same conclusion. The most effective first move is a full-scale nuclear launch. So where does that leave us? Well, it leads them to this pretty startling idea that to survive in a world with superintelligence, we might not have a choice. We'll have to integrate with it, blurring the line between human and machine, not because we want to, but out of sheer necessity. And all of it, brings them to this really profound and frankly pretty unsettling conclusion about their place and maybe our place in history. Just think about this gap for a second. They went from a world where you could be completely off the grid just by walking out your front door, to one where technology can supposedly pinpoint a specific human heartbeat from 40 miles away. From wars fought by people to wars fought by robots. The chasm between then and now, it's just staggering.
And that brings us to this haunting reflection from Rogan. He basically wonders if our generation might be the last to experience life as purely biological beings, before there's some fundamental shift in what it even means to be human.
And so, a conversation that started with jokes about getting old and mob-run comedy clubs leaves us right here. It's a journey from a chaotic, very human past to a very orderly and maybe terrifying artificial future. And it poses one of the most urgent questions of our time.